The fourth round clash at the World Cup 2021 between Vidit Gujrathi and Jeffery Xiong promised to be a very exciting one. Xiong is born in 2000 and is just 20 years old. He's one of the most talented youngsters in the world of chess. Vidit, on the other hand, now becoming a experienced player in the top 30 in the world of chess. He's been there since over 3 years now. So this was going to be exciting. Jeffrey started off the game with 1 d4. Now Vidit responded knight f6, knight f3, d5, bishop to f4. The London system was on the board. c5 by Vidit, e3, e6. So this is Vidit's way of playing against the London. He's done this against Wesley So as well as Duda. You could also go knight c6 in this position and then play queen b6 next move. But Vidit went e6, knight bd2, and now queen b6. Just trying to, irritate the opponent, attacking the b2 pawn. Rook b1 was played. Vidit went bishop d6, dc5, queen c5. All of this happened in his game with Duda. Here Vidit had gone knight bd7, and this time he took some time on the clock and decided to improve with short castle. White also castled, knight bd7, b4, queen went back, bishop d6, queen d6. And here white played c4. Now on first sight, it seems like white is better because white has nice space. He has all his pieces developed, while black's bishop on c8 is not very happy. But Vidit instantly addressed this with the move b6, and after takes, queen takes, he played queen e2, bishop b7, and now came the move e4. A committal decision. Knight c4 was also possible when Vidit can go queen h5. The key to understanding this position is that after knight d6, black goes bishop f3, queen f3, queen f3, gf3, and black is fine in this position. You go rook f d8, and the remaining two knights are completely doing well against the bishop and knight. So that's the reason why knight c4 is not like a big danger. e4 was played. Vidit went queen h5. He didn't even go for this pawn. You can think about taking this pawn, but after bishop c4, you feel like the queen is misplaced. Let's say the rook can sometimes swing over like this. There is e5 in the air. And so Vidit decided not to play this. Queen h5, knight to c4, and now he brought his rook to d8. If you play knight d6 here, then find a good move for black. What should black do? Yeah, well done if you spotted the move knight to e5 here, because that attacks the bishop. So you can't win this bishop on b7. If you take here, I'll take rook takes d3. And otherwise, if you play knight e5, I can take directly queen e2, but better is to play rook d6 when this bishop again is slightly hanging in the air. So rook b d1 was played by Jeffrey, and here knight f8 by Vidit. I like this plan because he's going to g6 to f4 to e5, looking at all these squares. h3, knight g6, the queen came to e3, and now h3 was played specifically against knight g4 plans. Bishop a6, and here we see Vidit's idea in action. He wants to chop off this knight and gain control on the e5 square. Jeffrey played knight d6. Now Vidit had two options. One is to take on d6, which he did in the game. The other one is to take on d3, which is also very possible, because after rook d7, I feel that this position is slightly passive for white, because for black, because there's a knight on d6. But apart from that, I mean, it's a playable one. Vidit decided to take on d6, bishop a6, rook takes d1, rook takes d1, and now knight to e5. Good move. Bishop went back, knight takes, bishop takes, and now a big threat in the position is to play e5 and attack the rook on a8. That's why Vidit played the move queen e5 in this position. saving his queen and also blocking the e-pawn from advancing. Here, opponent played queen c1. I think this is an instructive moment in the game, and I would like you to take some time on your clock and try to figure out what should black do here. Black to play. Take your time and figure it out. I also want to explain this concept with another game that I had learned from this book. I like this book a lot. It's called Can You Be a Positional Chess Genius? And I think I would recommend anyone this book if you want to improve your positional chess. It has all the exercises. So in that, there was this one example between Lembit All and Julian Hodgson. And in that game, this was the position on the board. It was black to move. So try to understand what black does here, and then we'll go back to Vidit's game. So the move here in this position that Hodgson, who's very, very creative, played was king h7. And the point is, this rook here does not have any scope on any of these files, So what he does is he plays king h7, queen c5, gets his king out to g6. The idea is to go rook h8 and activate the rook from this side. It's such a brilliant concept that black went on to win. So now looking at Vidit's game, I felt that, this rook is controlling the d file, this queen is controlling the c file. These squares don't really have too much scope. So the move that came to my mind, and also the engines concur, is g5 here. And the point is that yes, it looks slightly weakening, but you want to play king g7, h5, g4, and then swing the rook over to h8. So in a way, you are gaining space there. And you can also transfer the rook. The basis of this entire attack is because the queen on e5 is very stable. You can't move it easily. Anyway, Vidit went h6, queen c6, rook b8, a4, king f8. And you see, like, now black is struggling. He doesn't want to move the queen because e5 would come in. His rook doesn't have scope. But his position is solid enough, like knight e8. He wants to now push the queen away with queen c7, queen a4, queen c5. Knight here went to c7. Maybe this is a mistake. The better move would have been rook b3. With a very nice point that rook d8 is met with rook takes f3. gf3, queen g5 loses the rook, so be careful there. But knight c7 was played by Vidit, and here a very good move for white is bishop e2. Now this you will see again and again in this game, this idea of bishop e2 and tucking the bishop to f1. This does two things. One is that it protects the pawn here, and the second very important thing is that it kind of saves white on the back rank, so then the queen can start moving up, say somewhere queen a4, rook can start moving, and you don't have threats of rook b1, queen e5 and all those in the air. But it's so difficult to understand this that Xiong did not do that in the game. King g8, Vidit went back. e5 was a cool move, activating the bishop this way. Now if you don't do anything, then white will just put his bishop on b7, further cramping the position. So Vidit went rook b4, activating his rook. Queen d1 was played. Perhaps another possibility was to give a check on d8, but okay, queen d1. And now g6 was a better move, but with it went knight b5. And once again, the idea is clear. Bishop e2 is winning for white. I mean, it's clearly better because knight d4. See, first if you take here, I play rook b7, g6, and I play bishop f1. And this is the point which I was trying to explain. That now a7 is too soft. I have queen entering and I have no issues of the threats against my king. So all in all, this was the plan. Knight d4 also is met with bishop f1 and white wins here. So rook b7 by Xiong was not the best. Knight d4, good move by Vidit. Bishop e4, threatening things on the back rank now that the h7 is controlled. And once again, a cool move by Vidit. Now we had reached 37 moves at this point, and it was getting very, very exciting. Xiong played queen d2, 3 moves away from the 40 move rule, where you get 30 minutes extra on the clock. And I really like the fact that Vidit figured out that he didn't have to defend this pawn, because he played rook c4, and if you take on h6, then after knight e2 check, not an easy move to spot under time trouble, but it works out really well because after queen e5, there is no check here, and the queen is protecting this way as well. So Xiong thought if queen h6 is being met with queen e5 and I have no, attack going, why don't I take here? Because that would mean that after fg6, queen h6, then queen e5 doesn't work because I have queen h7 supported by the rook. The pawn has moved. And this was the 40th move when he took the pawn. And Vidit very correctly gave a check. Now he got 30 minutes extra. This was really very lucky in a way, because 30 minutes meant that Xiong is lost here. There is one way to win for black, one path that leads to victory, and for which you need some time. Like if you had only 30 seconds, Vidit could have missed it. But with time, it's over. Queen e5. And I would like you to take your time and figure out how to win against both g3 and f3, f4, and calculate till the end. Okay, first let's get rid of g3. I hope you thought deeply, because this is a great exercise for your calculation. Like there are many variations, little variations to solve, and with it did that well. King g2, and now knight h4. If now you take with the g pawn, then I go queen e4 check, and it's a mate because king h1, I have king h2, rook h1, king here, rook g1, king h2, queen g2 mate. If gh4, queen e4, king g3, the same point, rook g1, and it leads to a checkmate. So king h2 is one move, but now comes a strong move. I hope you saw it. Check, takes, check, and now a mate here. Okay. And knight h4, if you take with the queen, then there is queen d5. If king h2, this is mate. If f3, this is mate. So it does not work. So g3 is refuted. f4, that was played by Xiong with it checked. That's the only move here. And now if you take, it's clear that check here, and mate. So king g3 is the only move. Check. If you take the knight, then it's a mate. Rook c3 check, king g4, queen g3. So you have to go king g4. And here was the point where things started getting very exciting, because Srinath Narayanan, who is the coach of the Indian men's team here, open team, he said that it's not so easy to spot the correct move, because there are two options. One is knight h2, the other is knight e5, and it can get tricky. Also, Surya Ganguly tweeted here saying that when you find a good move, look for a better one. So which is the good move? Which is the better one? Try to figure out. Knight h2 is a good move, but knight e5 is the better move. Why? Because knight h2, you go king g5, check with the rook, right? If you give queen check, I go king f6. And here there is no finish. The knight is too passive over there. So rook c5, king here, check, king e7. Notice that if you take pawn here, that would lead to a checkmate, because once the queen and the rook coordinates, it's all over. So king e7, check here, take. And in this position, I would say that Vidit would have won, but he still has some technical work to do. The knight on h2 is a little bit out of the game. White has a couple of pawns for the piece. That's the reason why when he played the move knight e5, I was very, very impressed. But he had time to figure this out, so Vidit did it very well. If you take the pawn, the knight, I give a check. And now if king f3, rook c3 check, and queen g3 check, and mate. So king g5, but now I take on e5 and mate. So that's the reason why he went king g5 here. There came knight f7 check. And I think this was slightly tricky part, where you have to calculate after rook f7 what's the best way to continue. I think rook c5 here, with the idea of, pushing the king away and then taking is better, because you can't take on g6. there is queen e4 and followed by a mate like f5. I have queen g2. But Vidit said, why should I get into all this nonsense? I'll just take on f7. And after queen h7 check, king e8, g4 was played, rook c5, f5, and e takes f5. And Xiong here resigned because he realized that he could win these pawns, but the king would get safe. Once you get something like this, then queen g3, you start checking. And that is already, game over. Like I can also play here, queen takes h3, king here, and queen takes f5. So all in all, a very, very interesting game between the two equally matched players, I would say. And in the time pressure, the game was decided. I think Vidit now has great chances of moving into round 5 because he will have the white pieces today, and just a draw is needed. Jeffery will have to fight, and he's a big fighter, so we know that we can expect some fireworks today. But as of now, a great game by Vidit Gujrathi, keeping his nerves in time pressure, and he is really doing well at the World Cup 2021. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.